I made more in pro wrestling in 3 years than I did in MMA. Um, as far as my MMA career goes, I've never really, made it to a huge stage as far as making big time money. I think the Ultimate Fighter, Titan Fighting Championships would have been, the biggest payday type situations in my MMA career. So I'm not really going off of a big payday there. But in pro wrestling, my two experiences with the two companies that I've been signed with are basically you're treated like an employee. You get paid every 2 weeks. And you kind of have, you can expect paychecks coming in and whatnot, a little bit more security. And then with the WWE, they're long term as an employee there, it's a lot more appealing than it would be for a UFC fighter. And the UFC, I think this is just my guess, but I would guess about 75% of the UFC roster would require a second income in their household if they have kids and you're not, some bachelor or something. But I would say 75% of the roster requires a second income, whether it's a job or a wife or whatever. So the WWE is not really like that, where once you're there, it really is like a full-time career that you can build a life on. But they're both, at the end of the day, you can complain about either one depending on your perspective. You know how it goes. I'm really fortunate enough to where my life, as far as my income, all revolves around combat sports. Whether it's I run a kids program inside of James's gym Monday through Thursday. And so, I have an income through that, which is just being on the mats where I'm constantly training and doing private lessons. So if I'm not staying in shape and staying fight ready on the mat, my pro wrestling gimmick is a professional fighter. So by me just kind of living my normal life kind of works for the pro wrestling world. Obviously, the two game time and game days are different type of activities, but that's a really easy difference, obviously, because pro wrestling's theater and MMA is a sport. I started pro wrestling almost 3 years ago, and so I've been doing that. What got me into it was a company in Kansas City that was running a full-time promotion with good benefits, and I had interest in getting into pro wrestling, and that company kind of gave me the excuse to really go after it. And so kind of got my feet wet in that company, and then they went under, so the paycheck stopped coming from them. And then I just kind of stayed on the pro wrestling circuit for really no reason other than I was just enjoying it. I didn't really see much of a big future or nothing like that. Other than, maybe a potential possibility in a cruiserweight division or something like that. But just staying at it and trying to get better. And then I ended up getting signed to a professional wrestling promotion called Evolve, which is basically like the developmental league for the WWE and to NXT. And so I've really been going pretty hard with pro wrestling, I'd say, the last about 10 months as far as making it a main focus. It just depends on your schedule in either one. Like, I've known guys like the Adam Coles of the world, the Roderick Strongs of the world, Seth Rollins of the world. These guys were working, 5 nights a week doing shows, going really hard for 10 plus years. And not everybody lives the life of being able to get 5 bookings a week across the world and working indies at a high level. So that type of lifestyle as a pro wrestler, man, that is brutal on your entire body. But then also, if you go to the flip side of pro MMA, which you're probably more familiar with, the training and the sparring that goes into that is brutal and consistent, depending on who you are. You've known fighters and talked to fighters that spar all the time and have for 15 years. And then fighters that kind of, do it a little bit differently. So it just kind of depends on who you are. But to simplify it, I would break it down to this. Pro wrestling, that is more like getting hit with a bat. Ow. MMA is more like I've been exerting my muscles all day long. Now they're just dead. Right now, my goal is NXT is a live cable show on Wednesday nights, and then 205 Live is its own hour-long show on Friday nights that airs only on the WWE Network. And what 205 Live is, it's just a league owned by the WWE that represents little guys only, the cruiserweights, and they film it on the SmackDown cards. So really, I think in my near future, I could see myself, possibly competing in the cruiserweight division for 205 Live or NXT. But as far as like Monday Night Raw or SmackDown and that stuff goes, I think I'd have to have some sort of put my foot in the door in those two things first. So that's just kind of, my pro wrestling journey. I haven't really been setting out with a lot of goals or expectations. It's just been having fun and doing my best. So that's just what I'm doing. One cool thing that pro wrestlers do is they take themselves seriously as a brand. So, like at every show, they have a lot of cool shirts to sell. And even if they're not wrestling, they're selling shirts. 8x10s, wristbands, rubber bands, and just, creating a following in that sense. But, they're two whole completely different things, you know? So, there's some similarities, though, but not really. My last fight, it's been a while now. It's been like 9 or 10 months, something like that. Maybe I think around 9 months. And me, I'm 12-3 right now. I'm on a 5-fight win streak. One thing that hurts me is out of those 5 fights that I've won in a row, 4 of them are decisions. My last fight being a rear naked choke win, so that's good. But I don't really have a burning desire to compete as far as, just competing for the love of the game. I've had, 37 MMA fights total, and I've been doing it for a long time, and I enjoy training. But, and I also enjoy competing. But I want to do, if I'm going to compete in MMA, I want it to be, something that could be worth, whether it enhances my professional wrestling gimmick or whether it enhances my bank account or pushes my MMA career forward. That would really, help with, getting up and getting motivated for a fight and competing. But I sound like some grizzly old, veteran that's, needing expectations to compete. And it's not like that either, it's just, I've been focused on wrestling, and right now, MMA is a huge priority in my life because I'm good at it. It's, hard work creates fulfillment, and anybody enjoys that. So that's pretty much why. And then I also teach a kids program, and I'm on a 5-fight win streak. So why would you stop now? Tell Jason House to get me a big fight, maybe like the UFC or something in Japan, and then I'll be fighting. I don't really wish anything different on the show, but it's interesting the type of narratives that could have been painted on what happened. And I think one thing that was interesting about that show was, for people who don't really follow MMA to a really close eye, that kind of painted a picture of, I maybe don't take the sport seriously, or I didn't train hard, or didn't care about the fights coming up. But on that season, everybody would have said I was probably the hardest working one in the house when it came to training and things like that. And so I guess just it painted the narrative of someone who didn't care and missed weight, as opposed to a guy who cares a lot and missed weight. So maybe that's what I would have changed, but who cares? Anybody watching, I guess, a reason to support me would be, I'm looking to be, the first dude to compete inside the UFC and the WWE in the same calendar year. And I think I'm on the brink of doing those two things. And you can follow all that at Sharkbait816 on Twitter and Instagram.